Brian Mezzaferi with the band I Fight Dragons was my guest. This is such a talented group that works on projects that I promise you no one else is doing right now, and they are in the process of putting together a new album. Here is Brian from I Fight Dragons to tell you more.
We are working on what we're calling our album adventure. So it's a Patreon campaign that we launched maybe 6 months ago now, and we're in the thick of it, making a new album, but releasing various pieces of in-progress work to the patrons every week. So it's been a fun adventure so far. It's been kind of scary, but exciting to give folks that window into the work itself.
That's awesome.
In the process.
Is that a new process for you guys using Patreon to connect people with your art?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were not in the past. So we did fund our last album using Kickstarter, but even then, which was a great journey, and we learned a ton and had a great time, but also kind of a harrowing journey at times as well. And even then, I think while we tried to provide people updates, we were still very kind of close to the vest as far as the work in progress stuff, which we've so far, even when we've kind of opened up a little bit about how we're making it, the in process stuff that's kind of still warts and all and is probably going to change 5 times before it's finished. This is the first time that we've really kind of opened up that piece to our fans.
Can you catch people up from the near future till now? I mean, a couple years have passed. What have you guys been up to? And kind of describe this a process of getting back into the studio.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's a little embarrassing to say, but not a whole lot. There was a sleepy period there after the near future. So we, looking at the timeline, we launched the near future in early 2013, or I should say launched the Kickstarter to fund it. And then, as I said, it was kind of an exhilarating but harrowing journey to get from there to the actual release of the album almost 2 years later. And then once we had finally released it, there was actually still about another 4 or 6 months of work to do, fulfilling various Kickstarter rewards. So just for instance, I think the very last thing that we finally delivered was I wrote 7 fans' individual theme songs.
Wow.
And we recorded them in the studio and sent them out. So it was cool stuff, but at the same time, definitely way more than we'd bargained for, I think, in terms of extra things. And so from there, and that's we're talking about mid 2015. And we did have a kind of a sleepy period there, did a tiny bit of touring, but really kind of just were a bit burned out. And then it was really late last year, like 2016, that we started getting together more and feeling like there was still more we had to say as a band, and that I had to say as a songwriter, and so started writing some more, kind of getting together to play some of those songs, and yeah, ultimately culminating in this Patreon that we launched earlier this year, which has been kind of a totally different take on approach for us. It's almost we're sort of making a 90s radio rock album, but it's a blast, and we're all just having a great time, and yeah, excited to see. Hopefully, we'll finish that album and release it, I would guess, late next year. But yeah, kind of in the thick of it right now.
Thinking late next year, then what's it like being back in the studio for you, Chad, Harry, and now I believe Bill is back with the crew now?
Yeah, it's been, so that was the other sort of piece of news, because Bill ultimately had, or I should say initially, had left the band as we were working on the near future, one of the fun, harrowing things I mentioned. But yeah, as we were sort of coming back together and talking more about making music in late 2016, that was, Bill is still remained a close friend of ours, but he was part of those conversations as well, and yeah, we all got to talking and happily welcomed him back into the fold, and it's been a blast. I mean, it's funny because it's crazy to think that we've been a band for 9 years now, so I think things are bound to change over that time, and
Sure.
And they definitely have changed in pretty organic ways. I would say every piece of music we've released has been sort of a different environment. But this one's actually really cool. We're working on a lot of it so far in Packy's recording studio, and ultimately I think we'll go back to Rax Tracks in Chicago, where we had tracked and mixed the Near Future, but probably a little bit later on in the process. I think we're going to take more time kind of on our own in sort of Packy or and Bill's project studios and really kind of shape things up, especially through the early part of this year. It's been really exciting.
There's so much to an I Fight Dragons album, lyrically, just with the music and the different styles you use. And you said the new album is going to be a 90s rock album. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit, or is that still in the works a bit?
Sure. Well, both. It's definitely still in the works. There's nothing kind of set in stone about it yet, but as we've started to work on these new songs, yeah, I would say maybe it's just from the fact that we're not super prolific as it is. It's been a few years between each release for us. But yeah, with the Near Future, we definitely were going sort of channeling like Rush, 2112, kind of like putting our prog hats on and getting a bit wild musically, which was a blast in its own way. But as we were starting to work on some new music for this, it's just kind of come out to like much kind of tighter songwriting, tighter songs as a whole, but also just, it's funny to say 90s radio rock, but like that's just been what's scratching that itch right now. I don't know, you don't hear a ton of, and again, maybe it's coming from the fact that we've been a band for 9 years, so we're all getting older, but you don't hear a ton of the kind of 90s alternative sound coming back as much as I want it to, and as much as a lot of us want it to. I think it is on the way back.
Sure.
But it's not quite, and not that I listen to a ton of radio these days, but when you do, it's the things that like sort of fall into the rock genre are either sort of what I think of, there's no guitars in them.
Sure.
On one side, or you've got more sort of what I think of as active rock, or they sometimes call it active rock in the radio world, which is like, a little bit heavier, some screaming, and that's, got its great place as well, but obviously that's not so much us. So yeah, I think it's kind of trying to carve out a spot and just chasing what feels fun to us right now, and the closest thing I can use to describe where it's going so far is that 90s radio rock adjective.
That's great. I'm already excited for it. That's awesome. Do where you draw your inspiration for music change as you progress as a band?
Yes and no. I would say yes. Inevitably, obviously, as you grow and get older and listen to different styles of music and different artists that influence you, obviously things change. But at the same time, a lot of our core influences have always remained. We're obviously very much influenced by like Weezer and other power pop stuff like Fountains of Wayne.
Sure.
But and obviously at the same time, the fact that we're making chiptune, it always comes with its own sort of very specific set of influences, either whether you think of them as video game in nature or just the fact that they come from a very specific era and a very specific sort of limited sound card that always kind of provides its own palette. So yeah, I would say we have that core stuff, but at the same time, we're all kind of, as a band, I would say we're very wide in our listening tastes, and so everyone always kind of has brought their own pieces as well.
And you brought up video games, and I believe Nintendo's had you guys do work for them, and you've done work for huge TV shows too. What's it like when they approach you and want your work to be part of a big project like that?
I mean, it's it's happened a handful of times to us, and it's always been just surreal. Whether it was the getting to do that music video with Nintendo was just mind blowing. Because also the crazy part about that was it wasn't only we want to use your music, but like, we're going to fly you to LA for 24 hours and we're going to shoot this crazy 3D music video for the Nintendo 3DS. And that was like just I think I would still rank that up there, and my bandmates would agree, as one of the like most fun kind of random adventure things that we ended up doing over the past 9 years. And yeah, I mean, that was amazing. And then so with the Goldbergs theme song, which is I think maybe what you're referring to there, that was surreal in its own way too, because so the story of how that happened was it was when we actually had kicked off the Project Atma Kickstarter that ultimately was the project ended up being the Near Future. one of the first backers was Adam Goldberg, and he
Wow.
sent me a message and saying, "You don't know me, but I love your music, and I've got a TV show coming out next fall. I want you to write the theme song." And so then even from there, it was many months spent collaborating with him, and I wrote about 20 different kind of little 15 to 30-second theme songs, and that was kind of its own really fun project to work on, and still a bit surreal that that it not only happened, but that the show has been such a big hit and
Yeah.
is now in its fifth season with a sixth to come, and in syndication now too. So it's one of those. I had a friend text me the other day with just an image of her like guide on TV, and it was like for the next 3 hours straight were just Goldberg's episodes. And I was like, yeah.
That's me. How does it feel when somebody like Adam Goldberg, or really anybody just out of nowhere, gets in touch with you and says, "We like your music, we listen to you," and they're across the country, maybe even across the world?
I don't think that's something that you can ever kind of get used to, at least for me. Like I suppose for maybe folks that have crossed the line into uh, the type of fame where you just don't check your own email anymore. But I certainly check my email all the time, and yeah, anytime it's some kind of nugget like that, it's always sort of a little bit mind blowing.
You guys still do personalized songs for fans, and that's so cool that you do that. Well, how do you go about that process, and what were you thinking when you wrote those songs that were tailored for one fan in particular?
Man, I did not think of how difficult it was going to be. To be honest, that was, I think, part of the reason that ended up being the last Kickstarter reward we fulfilled was, it was one thing to do some of the more straightforward rewards, like, handwrite a lyric sheet and frame it and sign it. But when you're actually composing a new song that's supposed to be someone's theme song, it was an unbelievable amount of pressure. And thankfully, I'm trying to think all of them. Just about everybody was really happy with the way their theme song came out. Maybe one or two that weren't blown away, and that's
Okay.
still of course that still sticks with me where I'm like, I really want everyone to be thrilled. But yeah, it's a totally different experience writing writing a song for one person, especially when you've said it's supposed to be their theme song. There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, I bet Chicago is always done a great job, I think, supporting bands. And have you guys felt the love going back and being out in front of people?
Oh yeah, I mean it's we're all from Chicago, and just the fact that we, as we alluded to, we haven't been particularly active in the last few years, and so every once in a while when we kind of come out of our cave and play a show, I would say I'm constantly astounded at the fact that people will come out and rock with us uh, and know all the words, and it's sort of like our long lost friends or whatever. 'Cause, that we haven't been hanging out anymore because we're all growing up, but everybody gets back together and has a great time.
You guys have accomplished. I only have a few more questions, Brian, and thanks again for doing this. You've accomplished
Yeah,
just
my pleasure.
more than 99.99% of bands probably ever will accomplish. But do you ever look back and just kind of are almost in awe of how much you guys have been able to do?
Yes, I mean there's no other way to say it. It's just because it's funny, in the grand scheme of things, uh, we didn't. It's not like we've been, like famous and like I said, I still check my own email. I don't think we sort of like blew up as it were, but at the same time, it's funny because I've told multiple people in my life and other folks, like, we've just made it so much farther than I ever thought I would, or I ever thought like a band I was a part of would get to, and had got to have so many just amazing experiences, whether that's being signing with Atlantic Records, even a lot of the like funny negative experiences of going through the music industry's meat grinder as a songwriter and all that, where you're like, it was of course miserable at the time, but like what an awesome life experience to have had. And yeah, so long story short, I feel like it's we've had more success than I think anyone ever would have estimated this Chicago chiptune rock band would have had, with when we were standing up there in our superhero t-shirts with our Nintendo controllers.
You have an upcoming show too. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's coming right up. Yeah, it's this Friday, this Saturday, December 23rd at Lincoln Hall in Chicago, and we'll also be live streaming it as well. So next
Awesome.
Saturday night.
Where can people catch the live stream? Is that on the band's website?
Yeah, we'll probably be using Facebook Live for it.
Very
So we'll
cool.
we'll post it on social media and all that. But uh,
Brian, what else
ultimately,
should people know?
check out the Patreon. Really, if I'd say, if this is if you're an old iFight Dragons fan or hearing about us for the first time, check us out on Spotify, and if you like it, join the Patreon. It's the funniest thing is you actually pledge money, but you're not charged anything. So you like pledge that like once this, and that's sort of funny the way we're doing it because most Patreons are like you pay every week for the whatever was created that week, or you pay once a month, whatever it is. And so we're sort of using it wrong in that we keep releasing stuff every week, but you're not charged anything until the album's done.
Mm.
So sort of intentionally on our part because we just don't know how long it's going to take. But so come join the Patreon, pledge money, pay nothing till it's done,
I like
and
that. I like that
listen.
catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to our demos and hopefully have a good time.
Brian Messaferi with the band I Fight Dragons. Brian, thanks so much. Great speaking with you.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.